of raising aspirations is really, really important. And this is a photograph that came from a programme that was called Aspirations for Life, that was a Department for Education programme which ran at the same time as Getting a Life. And what this was about was looking at the early years and at primary schools to see what was going on and what people knew there about how to raise aspirations. And it's no surprise that because we know from older young people and adults, they always say, nobody ever talked about work when I was at school. Nobody ever asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up. And so this programme actually did some work with younger children, families and services. And you know, they did produce quite a lot of nice materials, but the message here is that we've got to work with our very early years workers, health, who get in very early, social care, and early years education to make sure that they're thinking about life chance outcomes for young people when they're young, and you know, normal life chance outcomes for them at whatever age, but also knowing that everything that happens to children is very significant for them as adults. And so if we don't do the right stuff about aspirations from the early years, we're significantly impacting on people's ability to get a job as they grow up. Plan for employment early. This is just a picture of two young people in North Yorkshire who are also a Pathfinder champion, and I was really struck by this presentation because Rachel on the right there did a presentation about her experience of education and the fact that she hasn't got a job. She's in her 20s now, and she's got autism, but she's very, very academically able, and she went to Leeds University and did her degree in physics. But she speaks about how when she was at secondary school, all the emphasis was on the fact that she was really good at maths and physics, and that was, you know, well, you're going to do your A-levels and you're going to go to university. And she said nobody ever really thought about the rest of her life, and certainly not about employment, because we've got that idea still, haven't we, which is beginning to realise is wrong. If you've got a degree, you get a job. And particularly for someone with additional needs, you know, she's got lots of additional barriers, and she speaks really clearly about how she went to university. She didn't have one friend for the entire time. She didn't live in halls because she was scared, because she didn't know how to be with other people, and she had to travel every day from wherever she lives to Leeds, so, you know, a bit of a journey there and back every day. And she basically, her message is, you know, nobody planned with me for my life. It was all just on one. And we do that in different ways with lots of young people, don't we? And one of the things she said that really struck me was, people think that autistic people don't want friends. She said, we all need friends. I just find it really difficult and I need a lot of support. I do it differently, you know, so it's quite a powerful message. And she really wants a job. So use the curriculum. I've already said that at the moment we don't normally have supported employment working in schools, but there's a lot of opportunity in the curriculum right from the early years through to college, which could be used to support people into employment. And this is Cody, who's in Greenwich, who's one of the preparing for adulthood young people, and his mum and his brother. And in Cody's plan, he very much wanted to work. You know, that came out as a big outcome, as we tried to make it for everybody. And what his school have done is they started to do very detailed vocational profiling in school, supported by the local supported employment people. So, and this is about sharing expertise. I've already said that one of the problems is that we don't know enough to be able to support young people well. So often people get the wrong information or don't get any information, and it's really important that in local areas we share more of what we do. And I know you've been doing that in Manchester when you put together your team of planners. That was a multi-agency team, and we've got to get much better at that. Key working is one of the ways of doing that, so that we develop much more skill among a bigger group of workers who can work with young people and support them and know what's possible and positive. And how do we know what's positive and possible? Well, on the right is Steve Bayer, who's one of the main researchers in supported employment. He's at Cardiff University. And his work and all of the references that he gives really give us a wealth of information about how we support young people into employment. And then Laura over here is, some people have met Laura, she's in Halton and she runs a very successful accessory business, and she's a very inspirational speaker, and she's spoken at quite a lot of our gatherings, and she gives all these messages about no one ever asked her when she was at school, etc. And then once we have that knowledge and we have that evidence and we know what's working, it's about how do we make sure that young people and families get it. The local office should help that, but at the same time we need to be able to give really nice, short, easy, accessible, clear information to people when they need it about what they need. And this is Mitchell, who's in Lancashire. Some of you probably know Mitchell and his story. And he was the first person in the country to have a personal health budget. And that was really about his mum being very frustrated about his package of support. He's got very complex health needs, he was getting all sorts of carers and it was all a bit unreliable, and she was having to get her stuff from all sorts of places. And she found out by talking to her local health people that it was possible to have an individual budget, not necessarily at that stage as a direct payment, but as a virtual budget to be spent on the things that Mitchell needed and the people who cared about him really put together. And so by having that information, she was able to put together a much better plan for Mitchell and have a personal health budget, and then help other people around the country to learn about that. So information is really, really, really important. One of the biggest issues for getting employment is that young people need work experience while they're still at school, and this is Helena. You know, we know that by her mum's passion for her moving into adulthood with a job, that Helena did do work experience when she was at school, and what a difference that made to her and to the whole family. And that picture down there was Helena at your Dragon's Den a few years ago, when employers were invited to meet some of the young people that were in the Getting a Life group, and that was very successful. Okay, and so what we've got to do, and we've got to think about from the very beginning, how do we support young people with a range of disabilities into these kind of routes into employment, and get an understanding that there's different ways of supporting young people into employment. It's not just one route. Traditionally, and there's still a lot of this practice around, there's an assumption about people with particular disabilities can only do or only want to do a very narrow range of stuff. And you know, the traditional thing is often we hear about a school having a retail experience or a gardening experience. So for some young people that's fine, but we've got to get away from that and really be person-centred and think about what each young person really enjoys and what their aspirations are. And we've now got a range of different routes into employment. So we've got straight supported employment, where somebody gets a job and they're supported. We've got internships, traineeships, apprenticeships, self-employment and education with training.